Boa noite, amigas e amigos do Clipping, tudo bem com vocês? Vamos chegando, vamos ficar confortável aí, que logo a gente vai dar início para o papo de hoje. Contem aí, como é que vocês foram no CACD nesse ano? Passaram no TPS, chegaram perto, ainda estão na labuta? Queria realmente saber de vocês, usem os comentários aqui para a gente conversar um pouquinho. Queria, em nome de toda a equipe do Clipping, dar parabéns para os bravos CACDistas que tiveram sucesso na primeira fase esse ano. Eu estava lá, sei que não foi nada fácil, então realmente vocês estão de parabéns por esse ano, espero que tenham feito uma boa prova ontem. O objetivo da live de hoje é justamente comentar um pouquinho do que rolou na prova de ontem, então sem mais delongas, eu queria dar início ao papo de hoje, mas antes um rápido disclaimer, né? Eu queria apresentar um pouquinho do que a gente faz por aqui, caso tenha caído de paraquedas, né? O Clipping é a plataforma mais completa de estudos para quem sonha ser diplomata, independentemente do nível. A gente acredita bastante na democratização do acesso ao CACD, e por isso a gente busca auxiliar todo mundo a começar a estudar com autonomia e gastando muito pouco. E uma das maneiras de democratizar o acesso às informações do concurso é justamente comentando o que aconteceu na prova, né? E esse que é o objetivo da live de hoje. No último sábado e domingo, vulgo anteontem e ontem, rolou a segunda fase do concurso, então a gente teve as provas de português em um dia e inglês no outro. A gente convidou os grandes especialistas aqui da casa para estarem aqui conosco, dar uma luz um pouquinho do que rolou na prova, contar para a gente tudo que rolou nesse ano. Se você está assistindo a live e fez a prova no sábado e no domingo, a gente tem um recado especial para você. O curso intensivo de terceira fase começou hoje, está a pleno vapor. Os professores da casa trouxeram propostas muito boas nesse ano. O próprio professor Maurício vai comentar um pouquinho realmente de como o curso foi importante. O curso de português foi importante para o pessoal que fez a prova nesse ano. Então, se você quiser conhecer um pouquinho mais da nossa proposta, que é bem inovadora, o link está aqui na descrição, não deixe de conferir. Estão preparados? Gostaria de chamar para a tela o professor Maurício Costa. Boa noite, professor. Tudo bem?
Boa noite, Gabriel. Tudo bem? Obrigado pelo convite.
Obrigado por ter topado o convite aí. Eu sei que o fuso horário na Argélia não nos ajuda muito, mas é muito bom ter você aqui com a gente hoje. E a palavra está contigo. Se precisar de qualquer coisa, eu estou aqui nos bastidores. É só chamar. Pessoal, boa live para vocês. Usem os comentários aqui para dialogar com o professor. Se tiverem qualquer dúvida, é só chamar, que a gente está aqui à disposição. Valeu, professor.
Ok. Obrigado, Gabriel. Obrigado, pessoal do Clipping. Bom, então vamos começar. Eu vou começar fazendo um comentário mais geral sobre o que aconteceu na prova, o formato da prova, que é mais parecido com o que geralmente se faz na primeira aula dos cursos de segunda fase, que é tratar um pouquinho do que aconteceu nessa prova em relação aos anos anteriores, né? Dessa vez a gente já tem agora em 2022, né? A gente já tem uma massa crítica já de 3 concursos, 3 provas realizadas pelo IADES, com uma banca da segunda fase diferente da que coordenou a prova até 2018, e que teve implicações na mudança de formato, ou seja, né, com a volta do resumo e a retirada de um exercício, mas isso é um papo um pouco mais técnico, mas que teve mudanças também conceituais, né, em relação a como a prova é corrigida, o que se espera dos temas, a própria existência de um padrão de resposta para os exercícios. Eu diria que essa prova de 2022 ela foi mais parecida com a prova de 2019, né? Em que sentido? Na prova de 2019, nós tivemos lá aquela questão sobre a terceira margem do rio, né? E a relação com a política externa brasileira, que dava um comando um pouco mais aberto, né? Isso nesse momento estou falando da redação, certo? Que dava um comando um pouco mais aberto. Então ali tinha espaço para criatividade, né? Havia muitas possibilidades e muitos conceitos que podiam ser utilizados pelos candidatos para fazer a abordagem daquele tema. Fomos, então, para a prova do concurso 2020, que se realizou em 2021, graças ao nosso camarada coronavírus, que acabou acontecendo somente no ano passado, e nós tivemos uma redação que teve um comando fechadíssimo, certo? O comando da redação foi super fechado. Não só tinha os textos motivadores, como o comando da prova estabelecia sobre que trechos de cada texto você deveria tratar ou pelo menos escolher tratar. Então, era praticamente impossível, era praticamente impossível você conseguir, era uma proeza você ter uma fuga ao tema na redação com o comando daquela forma, como estava colocado, com tudo tão especificado. Na verdade, pelo o próprio comando da redação de 2021, né, no concurso realizado em 2021, ele praticamente dava a estrutura da redação que você tinha para fazer os parágrafos de desenvolvimento, etc, etc. E agora, nessa prova de 2022, nós tivemos um retorno, né, ao formato da redação de 2019. Em que sentido? Né? O comando da prova de redação foi um comando que deu possibilidades de abertura. Né? Deu lá os textos motivadores, daqui a pouco eu vou abrir aqui o arquivo da prova, que não foi, já respondendo aqui para a Mariana, né? Mariana Lacorte, que não foi disponibilizado pelo IADES ainda, mas a gente tem aqui acesso pelos alunos, né, que enviaram, né, o comando das provas, levaram a prova consigo depois que concluíram, e a gente vai ver daqui a pouco aqui o comando da redação e o comando dos demais exercícios. Tivemos também, então, aqui um exercício que se concentrou em temas mais culturais, né, especificamente, de forma mais direta, que já repete um pouco a tendência da prova realizada em 2021, e que inclusive segue um formato muito parecido, né? Mas o exercício nesse ano ele foi muito denso, né? Nós vamos ver aqui quando nós vemos o comando dos exercícios, do exercício, né, especificamente, nós vamos ver que a quantidade de conteúdo, de possibilidades que ele abre é praticamente impossível de ser tratada com uma profundidade necessária no exercício de 15 a 20 linhas, certo? Então, isso eu estou curioso um pouco para ver como será a correção do exercício em função de como as pessoas vão tratar das diversas possibilidades de abordagem, de tópicos que o próprio exercício propõe, né? Porque para tratar de todos eles, ou da maior parte deles, você tem que praticamente fazer uma lista, né? Você não faz análise nenhuma. E o texto do resumo, que nesse ano foi um texto muito diferente do resumo de 2021. 2021 a gente teve era um texto bastante técnico, né? De direito, né? E de direito interno, e era um texto muito técnico informativo. O texto deste ano, apesar de também ser um texto acadêmico, era basicamente um texto, né, do Hal Bopp contando, né, a história do desenvolvimento do modernismo, da arte moderna, para depois entrar no desenvolvimento do modernismo do Brasil, mas que pela sua estrutura mais narrativa e menos didática, né, acaba criando uma outra estrutura para o resumo, né? Não é tão fácil assim você identificar cada tópico que você vai fazer, cada tópico que você vai utilizar, é um pouquinho mais complicado do que o texto de 2021. Agora, qual é a parte mais importante aqui que eu gostaria de dizer antes de a gente abrir o espelho de prova? É que, por sorte, eu acho que a Letícia estava no curso de segurança. Eu acho que a Letícia está aqui. Todos os temas, eu não estou exagerando nem brincando, né? Todos os temas da prova de segunda fase de português, né, da segunda fase desse ano, foram tratados no curso de português da segunda fase do CLIP. Todos eles, né? Inclusive, nós tivemos um tema de redação que era sobre o papel do diplomata, né, que era, inclusive, uma citação do Guimarães Rosa, que falava que o diplomata é um sonhador que sonha em remediar aquilo que os políticos estragaram. Aí, no padrão de resposta, nós tratávamos lá para falar do diplomata como mediador, né, do diplomata na resolução de conflitos, e todos esses temas. Né? Então, as pessoas estavam preparadas. O outro também, que foi bem interessante, é que nós fizemos um exercício especificamente sobre literatura e música, né? Desculpa, sobre literatura e música, né? Com um padrão de resposta também um pouco voltado para o modernismo, fazendo cruzamento entre arte popular e arte erudita, né? E fazendo a relação entre música e poesia, que obviamente não é o mesmo texto, mas fica no conjunto do tema, tratando da mesma época e da mesma abordagem. E, por fim, um tema que eu acho que era, como dizer, inevitável, né? Era um tema inevitável para a prova de português de 2022, né? Que foi o texto do resumo, foi tratar, então, do modernismo, né? E do modernismo brasileiro nos 100 anos da Semana de Arte Moderna, certo? E foi até interessante que foi colocado no resumo, não foi perguntado de uma forma tão direta. No exercício, fundamentalmente, foi uma pergunta indireta, né? Sobre o modernismo brasileiro, e que deu, então, esse caráter assim, de termos a prova com a redação um pouco mais voltada para o que seria o conceito do trabalho de um diplomata. As pessoas estamos fazendo concurso para quê? Estamos fazendo concurso, né, para nos tornarmos diplomatas. E quem sabe um dia vocês vão estar aqui na África no meu lugar. Não estou falando isso para rogar praga, não, porque é uma grande oportunidade. Né? Então, eu não posso me queixar. Já trabalhei no Uruguai, nos Estados Unidos, agora na Argélia. Vamos saber o que o mundo me reserva um pouco para frente. Mas, enfim, meus ex-alunos agora estão com meus ex-alunos aqui removidos para Genebra, removidos para Paris, outra coisa linda, né? Ver as coisas se desenvolvendo. Bom, mas vamos lá, vamos entrar diretamente aqui. Queria pedir para o pessoal do clipe compartilhar o PDF, que tem os comandos da prova. Eu vou direto aqui para a página 4, porque o PDF ficou invertido, certo? E na página 4, então, nós temos a redação, ok? E aqui no comando da redação, o texto é um diálogo entre Einstein e Freud, porque a guerra, né? Que está nas obras completas do Freud, com o seguinte comando. Vamos lá. Com base na leitura dos excertos de troca de cartas entre Albert Einstein e Sigmund Freud, no ano de 1932, discorra acerca do papel da diplomacia, fazendo referência a uma ou mais ideias mencionadas nos textos apresentados e a momentos históricos. Certo? Bom, em primeiro lugar, a primeira coisa a se ter atenção aqui é que o comando fala especificamente com base na leitura dos excertos da troca de cartas entre Albert Einstein e Sigmund Freud. Óbvio que é possível daqui você extrapolar, né, e fazer leitura e responder a pergunta sem ter uma referência, responder o comando, né, sem ter uma referência direta aos textos, ok? Ao texto que está aqui dado. Mas o ideal é que você inicie a sua redação tendo o texto como ponto de partida para depois fazer a extrapolação. A referência a momentos históricos, para se tratar de guerra ou de preparação para a guerra, dá um leque, né, de possibilidades bastante variável, né, do que você pode tratar aqui. Por exemplo, estamos falando aqui de um texto que foi escrito em 1932, que foi escrito no Entre Guerras, que está falando na preparação da guerra e que poderia tratar, por exemplo, do fracasso da diplomacia. Né? O que fracassa nesse período? A Liga das Nações, por exemplo. O que vai acontecer depois? A Segunda Guerra Mundial, certo? Então, essa é uma possibilidade e que, na verdade, é a mais óbvia de todas aqui, dado o momento em que, o período, né, em que essa troca de cartas aconteceu, o contexto naquela época, tudo e tal. Mas isso pode ser levado, por exemplo, para falar, por exemplo, de preparação para a guerra em busca da paz, né? Ou como diz o Freud aqui, né? Olha só, que falou com a maior intimidade, né? Como diz o Freud, como diz o Sigmund, em algum momento aqui, né? Falando nesse trecho. Em sua forma atual, a guerra já não oferece a oportunidade de satisfazer o antigo ideal heróico. E no futuro, olha, isso aqui, olha a profecia, né? E no futuro, graças ao aperfeiçoamento dos meios de destruição, uma guerra significaria a eliminação de um ou até mesmo de ambos os adversários. E isso é muito interessante aqui, porque nós estamos vendo, né, o Albert Einstein, né, que é o maior físico da história, ou quem sabe haja controvérsia sobre isso, mas o Freud está fazendo uma profecia do que aconteceria depois da invenção da bomba atômica, né, e o que aconteceria no período mais quente da Guerra Fria. Né? Então, por exemplo, o que eu pensaria aqui, nesse primeiro momento? Crise dos mísseis de Cuba, por exemplo, né? A crise dos mísseis em Cuba é um ótimo exemplo de como você tratar dessa ideia do texto, da preparação para a guerra, para a possibilidade de destruição mútua de ambos os adversários, né? Em função, né, do desenvolvimento das formas de destruição e de como a diplomacia foi fundamental para solucionar aquele problema, certo? Eu acho que era uma das abordagens ideais e que dá, como se diz no futebol, né? Que, na verdade, dá na veia, né? E você joga a bola lá onde dorme a coruja. Certo? Quem não acompanha futebol, desculpe, mas foi a metáfora mais precisa que eu consegui pensar agora. Bom, agora esse é o comentário mais geral sobre a redação. Depois, vamos então para o comentário do exercício, certo? No comentário do exercício, aqui vocês vão ver que nós temos um comando super denso, né? Para fazer de 15 a 20 linhas. Então, vamos lá. Vejam qual é o comando aqui. Com o texto do Hermano Viana, né, o Mistério do Samba, considerando o encontro descrito pelo antropólogo Hermano Viana, suas reflexões, né, as reflexões do antropólogo, bem como a cultura brasileira em geral, ou seja, toda a cultura brasileira, né? Estamos falando da cultura brasileira em geral, analise a relevância no Brasil das artes como formadoras da identidade nacional. Nesse contexto, comente como as artes, sobretudo a música, podem ser campo privilegiado no qual é possível, além do debate identitário, o encontro entre a cultura popular e a erudita. Certo? Bom, porque aqui, nesse texto, especificamente, não vou ler o texto inteiro aqui, porque a gente tem pouco tempo, mas esse texto aqui está falando do encontro em que nós tínhamos, né? Sérgio Buarque de Holanda, Gilberto Freire, Villa-Lobos, né? E o pianista erudito da época, que era o Luciano Gallet, e o Prudente Moraes Neto, né? Neto do presidente. E do outro lado, tínhamos sambistas, que era Patrício Teixeira, Donga e Pixinguinha. Né? Então, aqui nós tínhamos o encontro do que era a arte popular e a arte erudita, com o Gilberto Freire, que, né, ia publicar o Casa Grande Senzala, o Sérgio Buarque de Holanda, que ia publicar o Raiz do Brasil 10 anos depois, né? O Gilberto Freire, que publicaria o Casa Grande Senzala 7 anos depois, né? Os dois fazendo debate identitário, certo? né, sobre formação da identidade brasileira, direta, cultural, né, e social, direta e indiretamente, com os que transformariam o samba no que seria o símbolo da cultura brasileira. Mas aí nós vamos aqui para o comando e nós falamos das artes em geral, em termos de formação da identidade brasileira. Isso aqui abre 1 milhão de possibilidades. Então, por exemplo, poderia falar do projeto da primeira geração do romantismo, do Brasil independente, poderia falar da fundação do EKGB, por exemplo, do Instituto Histórico e Geográfico Brasileiro, falar do mito das três raças, falar daquele período. Você poderia falar em outro momento, e aí para ficar nas artes em geral mesmo, porque vai da literatura às artes plásticas, da Semana de Arte Moderna de 22 e do modernismo, né? Do modernismo brasileiro de uma forma geral, chegando, por exemplo, no Manifesto Antropofágico, no conceito de antropofagia, que vai se tornar um conceito hegemônico o conceito hegemônico e, eu diria, o conceito síntese, né, do pensamento cultural brasileiro até o início dos anos 70. A gente vai chegar lá em Silveira Santiago e falar de outro lugar. Poderia, por exemplo, fazer as coisas de uma forma mais específica. Poderia pegar, por exemplo, o período ali do Estado Novo, né, do Vargas, quando ele cria o Departamento de Imprensa e Propaganda e coopta, né, grande parte dos artistas modernistas da primeira geração e alguns da segunda geração, e a partir dali, né, tenta formar uma nova a identidade de um Brasil moderno. Essa é uma possibilidade. Poderia chegar, por exemplo, a falar de como a música, não só o samba, mas como a música influenciou a formação da identidade brasileira, por exemplo, a partir da Tropicália, certo? Poderia falar de Vinícius de Moraes, poderia pegar e falar da Bossa Nova, né, que é um grande símbolo de antropofagia cultural, da fusão do jazz e do samba brasileiro, certo? Poderia, assim, com muita ousadia, mas que poderia funcionar, até porque, enfim, não vou fazer comentários mais específicos de bastidores, mas daria para falar até de Anitta aqui. E não estou exagerando, né? Daria para falar até de Anitta, que daria para falar de funk carioca, né? Poderia falar de poesia marginal, quer dizer, as possibilidades aqui são infinitas. Por outro lado, infinitas é exagero, né? Mas as possibilidades são muitas possibilidades. E o mais difícil, na verdade, de você fazer aqui é conseguir fazer um exercício no espaço tão curto, né, que consiga dar a profundidade que o comando pede. Porque ele pede duas coisas, né? Analise a relevância das artes como formadores da identidade nacional, e o analisar vai necessariamente demandar que você faça algum tipo de reflexão. Essa reflexão vai depender de algum tipo de comparação, de contraste, de contraposição, certo? E você vai ter que fazer um comentário, né? Como a música pode ser campo privilegiado para fazer o debate do encontro entre a cultura popular e a cultura erudita. Ou seja, a música é inescapável, certo? Desse exercício. Então, é importantíssimo aqui ter essa noção, né? Você vai ser obrigado a falar das artes em geral, no primeiro momento, né? E obrigado a fazer um comentário. E essa relação das artes em geral vai ter que estar relacionada à música no segundo momento, e você vai ter que tratar do encontro da cultura popular e da cultura erudita. E para isso, vai ter que fazer a escolha dos exemplos, ok? A minha sensação, na verdade, é que dado a densidade, né, do comando do exercício, pode inclusive acontecer o que já aconteceu em 2019, né, que a gente já viu o padrão de respostas. Aliás, ano passado aconteceu a mesma coisa também. O padrão de resposta, né, do exercício era muito maior que o padrão de resposta da redação, certo? E isso não é pouca coisa, né? Então, tenho certa curiosidade, né, de ver como o exercício vai ser corrigido na comparação, né? Porque a correção é comparativa e isso também é inescapável, né? Você sempre tem, quando estou corrigindo as redações, sou assim, e mesmo que não seja um padrão estabelecido por regra, é um padrão estabelecido por comportamento, certo? Por atitude. Sempre tem um exercício que a gente está lá corrigindo e ele vai definir qual é o nível, qual é a medida da regra, certo? Nossa, esse cara aqui fez o exercício que ele leu minha mente, parece que fui eu, corretor, né, aqui falando, parece que fui eu que escrevi esse exercício aqui, parece que o cara teve telepatia aqui, leu o que estava na minha mente como exercício, esse aqui é a régua, e aí a nota do conteúdo e da análise dos outros vai ser relativa, né, em relação a esse exercício que estabeleceu qual é o padrão de qualidade, certo? Temos muitas possibilidades. Como estamos nos aproximando no final, vamos para o que é necessariamente eu acho que é o mais trabalhoso, né, da prova, mas não necessariamente o mais difícil, que é o resumo, né? E aqui no resumo, então, nós temos ficou o contrário, né? Aqui no resumo, então, nós temos um texto Raul Bopp, que especificamente aqui, vamos lá, que é sobre a vida e morte da antropofagia, é o do texto, né? Vida e morte da antropofagia, que é basicamente, fundamentalmente falando sobre o modernismo brasileiro. E nesse primeiro momento, do texto, ele está fazendo uma contextualização, né, da arte moderna no início do século XX, falando das vanguardas europeias e de como as coisas eram no Brasil, e mais especificamente em São Paulo, né, naqueles primeiros 20 anos do século XX, ali até a Primeira Guerra Mundial, e que logo depois, né, vai desembocar na Semana de Arte Moderna. Mas o texto não chega nesse ponto. O que é o mais importante aqui para se ter em mente em relação ao resumo, certo? E que também está bem estabelecido nos padrões de respostas anteriores, né? E é diferente também da prova de inglês, é diferente da prova de espanhol e é diferente da prova de francês. O padrão da banca estabelecido no ano passado e no ano anterior pode ser que mude esse ano? Pode, né? Mas a gente só vai saber depois que acontecer. Então, nós temos que trabalhar com os dados que a gente tem. Os dados que a gente tem são as duas provas anteriores do IAS. Demanda que a cada momento a cada mudança, na verdade, né, de argumento, a cada informação nova do texto que você vai colocar, que o autor introduziu no texto, você precisa fazer uma referência ou ao texto ou ao autor. Por exemplo, no padrão do resumo do ano passado, do padrão de resposta ao resumo que foi dado, tinha 14 referências ao autor. 14 referências ao autor em 35 linhas, né? 35 a 50 linhas. Era muita coisa, certo? Então, a cada introdução vinha no texto tal, fulano de tal dizia isso. Depois vinha segundo o autor, vinha uma frase, duas, depois vinha o autor prossegue, depois o autor ainda, e assim foi, né? E era necessário, eu recomendo fortemente que se siga esse padrão e que se tivesse seguido esse padrão especificamente para o resumo da segunda fase, certo? Que é diferente, né, deixando bem claro, é diferente das indicações que se tem para as outras línguas. E é importante não misturar as coisas, certo? Por exemplo, vocês vão ter agora, o professor Chá vai entrar, né, e vai falar com você sobre a prova de inglês. Uma das coisas mais importantes que vocês precisam ter em mente é que tudo que é altamente recomendado, tudo eu estou exagerando, né? Mas em termos de estrutura, por exemplo, várias coisas são altamente recomendadas para redação de inglês, por exemplo. Na redação de português você vai ser massacrado, certo? Porque a lógica de estruturação da argumentação das línguas é diferente, né? O inglês é uma língua muito mais objetiva, muito mais direta ao ponto. Se você for, por exemplo, fazer a sua redação em português, e aí você for escrever lá um parágrafo dizendo em primeiro lugar, depois em segundo lugar, e depois concluindo, vai parecer que você está fazendo uma redação de vestibular, certo? E as redações de vestibular demandam uma maturidade intelectual muito menor do que aqui se exige no CSD, certo? Então, só para dar um exemplo para vocês terem as coisas em mente. Não misturem as línguas, certo? Não misturem as indicações das diferentes línguas. Prestem atenção sempre, né, no que a prova tem exigido nos anos anteriores. Espero que essa live tenha ajudado aqui vocês a entenderem a lógica do que aconteceu agora, em 2022. E se vocês precisarem de ajuda com os recursos, ok? Estarei disponível, certo? E agora podemos passar para o Gabriel para a entrada do chá. Você está sem áudio, Gabriel.
Perdão. Obrigado pelos comentários, professor. Foi excelente contar com a tua visão da prova esse ano. Então, pessoal, se precisarem do professor, você pode até passar a bio do Insta, não sei se do Twitter também, para o pessoal entrar em contato com você, caso precise de ajuda na fase de recursos agora também, que é bem importante, né?
Ok. No Instagram me acham pelo Diálogo Diplomático, @Diálogo Diplomático, certo? E eventualmente podem me escrever diretamente também, para recursos, especialmente, né? Na segunda fase, podem me escrever diretamente em mauriciocosta2006@gmail.com.
Perfeito. Muito obrigado, professor. Tenha uma excelente noite. A gente se vê logo por aí.
Obrigado. E um abraço para o chá.
Até mais. Bem, pessoal, a gente vai seguindo aqui com a segunda parte da live de hoje, que contando com os comentários do professor Shawn. Então tá na hora da gente ligar a tecla SAP aí e partir para a prova de inglês. Vou adicionar o professor Shawn aqui à transmissão. Hey, Shawn.
Oi, Gabriel. A gente fala um pouquinho em português, depois eu vou falar em inglês, tá bom?
Sem problema, o pessoal aqui tá acostumado. Então, obrigado por ter aceitado o convite aqui do Clipping. É sempre um prazer ouvir seus comentários sobre a prova. Eu acho que o senhor foi muito assertivo esse ano no curso intensivo de segunda fase. Até o professor Maurício estava comentando isso agora há pouco em relação a português, e inglês não foi diferente. Então, acho que está todo mundo ansioso para saber um pouquinho do que você achou da prova desse ano. Então, Fala tá com você. Se precisar de qualquer coisa, eu estou aqui no backstage. Então, é só me chamar. Mas, de resto, realmente eu vou deixar contigo agora. E, pessoal, interage com o professor, façam perguntas. Esse é o momento realmente da gente estar interagindo por aqui. Qualquer coisa eu estou à disposição. Obrigado, viu, professor?
Okay, good. I don't know how we're going to interact. I think if you want to interact with me in the chat here on this new platform, I'm not too familiar with this platform, but let's see how we're going to go, shall we? I've got slides, so I need to get my slides. And that might be a bit of a problem. Let me see if I can share the slides. You have no slides, isn't that good? And maybe I have to upload from my computer. There we are. Let's see if we can get this done well. Yeah, I thought I've got a lot to think about in this. This one. Let me just sort this out, everyone. I need to make sure where I've saved this. And then, because it's a different system, but you'll need this information. We're going to do the, we are going to look at HIT courses after going through the test, and that's going to be really important for you. There's a problem happened last year with the terrible examiner, really criminal, I keep saying, was the examiner last year. Yes, great, found it. You're in the show, you can see, okay, fine. Let's see if it's going to download my slide. And then, because last year the examiner really destroyed people. It was a trauma after. I couldn't believe how awful they are. So we're expecting the same type of behavior from the examiner. The previous year, geez, no problem. My students would have about 5 or 10 maximum of mistakes. And you'll see the example I'm going to give today that we were having 20, 30, 40 mistakes. And they weren't mistakes. It's like the examiner, let's say, I always joke, it's like the examiner got the piece of paper with the text and just closed his eyes and went like that, because there was no reason for any of them. So what was it like? It was like fake news. It was like trying to defend yourself against something that's wrong, saying that you made a mistake when you didn't. And that's very difficult to justify. Now, I think my slides are getting here. And so that was the problem. So, for example, when we usually get people sending HIT courses, my students, of course, and others, right, can you do HIT courses? You say, okay, but then when you see the number of mistakes, I couldn't do, I would do about, let's say, 30 or 40 in the 2 days we've got. I couldn't do that many last year because the examiner had just destroyed people's work for no reason at all. Right? And this is what is my fear this year. And this is why I'm going to talk to you about the HIT courses as well as the test. Now, we're still waiting for this show to come on, I think. Let's have a look, because I'm not seeing it downloading. Okay, so as we're waiting, I'm going to talk about the exam, because it's not downloading my PowerPoint. Well, the composition. My goodness, how easy the composition was. Where are those great questions about patriotism, about the policy of Brazil, about, international questions, deep questions, which required, good analysis and intelligent content. This was such a poor question. When we get to my PowerPoint, we'll be able to see how simple it was, how easy it was, how all of the information for you to organize the composition was already there, asking if diplomacy has changed or not. What a stupid and limiting question between a certain time. And 2 quotations. Well, actually, it's 1 quotation by Jovan, somebody from Diplo blog, of course, got lots of courses, based in Geneva, writes books. And then another quotation with no reference at all. Okay, I think we are here. Can we see my slides? Can someone let me know if you can see my slide?
Not yet, teacher.
Not yet. Okay, fine, let's wait. It's almost I can see something appearing. Right, but of course, there we are.
No, it's okay. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Now I think that where am I here? Am I on the right one? Yeah, there we are. Okay. So let's study this exam a little bit and then do HIT courses. Okay, so the composition, you like this. So, of course, the composition, I think it was laughable. I love compositions. I love seeing you write deep, well-analyzed compositions. And having such a limiting question like this is very disappointing for such an exam. All right, so, it would mean it's quite a simple question. So let's have a look. So, of course, my PowerPoint is not going to move here. So that will be a problem here. I've usually got some movement, but never mind. So here we see the 2 quotations, but in the second quotation, there's no reference. So what have we got to do? We've got to say the 2 quotes say the first quote and the second quote. That's all you can say. We can't even really, because we've got no mention if this quote is related to this gentleman here. So we see a very badly organized question, and then we see it was this quote that they took offline. I do it very often, try to find people with nice quotes to put a look online and to give good questions. It looks like the examiner only did this a few weeks ago. So it hadn't defined the question till now. Of course, there are lots of different difficult issues going on at the moment, different issues that he could have chosen better quotes, but diplomacy is adjusted to all economic, social, and technology development. Oop, let's go back. It is changed simply in order to remain the same. So has it changed? It's adapted. The quintessence, wow, what a word. Don't please use that next year in the composition. All right, don't forget this word. All right, hardly ever use it. It's just show off, really. Of diplomacy has been dealing with the interface of conflict and peacemaking, and its practitioners' ultimate goal remains the same: undertaking the challenging task of representing, negotiating, and reporting. Ooh, there we are. Quotation, really, from somebody we don't know. It's giving us half of the information. So let's continue. Let me continue the next one. There we are. Okay, so here was the question. This was supposed to appear on Flash, but my PowerPoint and Google don't seem to be working very well. So here's the question. Compare and contrast the quotations above. Now, obviously, you're going to do that anyway. Refer to the quotations. As we've done in all of our classes, as we know, those 3 points we've got to include in our introductions. One of them is referring direct to the quotation. Answer the quotations straight away. So you would compare and contrast it. Above, and do a brief historic survey. What poor language. Do a survey, my goodness, of the practice of diplomacy of the late 20th and 21st century. It should be full stop. Decide if the common core functions of traditional diplomacy has stood the test of time, or if they have changed in any significant way. So basically ask if they've changed. So we're going to compare and contrast the quotations. So what the second one, we don't know, so we have to be careful. All right, and we just have to look at what those messages are and make it compare and contrast. You do compare and contrast in TOEFL exams, simple writing. They actually don't have to state you to do that. Do a prehistoric survey, so anything between, let's say, 1980 and 2010. There's so many things we can use as our content. Okay, so here's our content. Between this time, we must have something too new, something too old. So we're not going back to the Second World War or the First World War or anything else. So remember, it's not a history test, okay? It's a test where you know the content of usually of international politics, okay, and diplomacy, of course. Then, of course, we've got decide the core functions of diplomacy have stood the test of time or changed, basically. So what are the core functions of diplomacy? Well, we know representing, negotiating, and I'll get this, and representing, negotiating, and reporting. It was already in the question. If you, they've almost given it to you. Okay, so here are 3 ideas for our 3 central paragraphs. All right, so this is a very poor question, okay? Of course, all the information is in there, but, they've given us the information, but they're defining what are the core values here, the core functions, sorry. And that's why I think it's a very poor question. They didn't put the name of the second person, the quotations, give lots of information that you're going to use in your question anyway, and even the organization. So when we're looking at this, again, I'm sorry the slide is not as clear as it should be, because usually there's too much information on here. I would have put it separately, so I do apologize. Okay, so when we're planning, of course, proper planning prevents poor performance. Did you take your time, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, preparing and planning to do what you say? I hope you did. You didn't rush into this. This is an easy question, but of course you could make mistakes if you haven't thought about it carefully. Discipline, self-control, these are the emotional, in a way, you've got an emotional decisions to make. And 5 hours after doing 5 hours Portuguese, and Portuguese is a different animal, okay? As Professor Marius was saying, it's a different animal. It's a different organization, okay? It's a different way of attacking the question. And then you certainly got to change your head and move on to the English next day. So, of course, what's our question in a way? We have to decide if the functions of diplomacy have stood the test of time. That's what the question you've got to ask. Has it stood the test of time or not? Okay, most people are going to say yes, they have. All right, why are you going to say no? It's going to be quite difficult. But you can, if you, of course, have those arguments and justify it with content. That content within this time period is what you need. And that's what that's what's going to be your illustration, okay? Doing a brief historical survey between that time. There your illustration. So between that time, your period you're going to choose. So for example, paragraph 1, going to get some water. Don't want to keep you too late here, all right? Okay, even my wife will be complaining if I'm here too late. But the recourse, the appeal is very important. So what did I do? It's so easy, this. I just went, I decided to say, what does a diplomat do? And I went straight to university here, and it came out, what do diplomats do? And they gave me 3 nice sentences straight away, exactly the same as on the questions, okay? Maintaining international relations regard issues of peace and war, so maintaining relations, that's representation, negotiating treaties and international agreements, negotiating, and of course, collecting information, reporting. Those 3 things that we find in the question, okay? So they're so easy. Of course, could you had other features, maybe helping, giving consultancy to companies, countries, not a lot more really, I think. But these are the 3 solid things that diplomats do. And of course, that's what you've been studying for the last year, 2, 3, or 4, or 5. So it's obvious what these are. So you're going to write your first question, first statement clear, and then with an illustration, okay? So maintaining international relations, well, you could say United Nations is a very good illustration of trying to keep the peace in one particular event. Maybe we could talk about the negotiation with Iraq and sanctions agreed with other nations in to avoid any outbreak of war. There are many things we could do. Treaties, of course, we could talk easily about the Paris Agreement. Okay, if that was successful or not as well. And there were other agreements, of course, that's been made. But then we could say that, well, they're not always successful, but the majority of the nations in the world agreed them, despite maybe United States withdrawing from the agreement. But again, a solid example. Examples are simple. You, with much more information than me, I'm an English teacher. I'm a teacher of diplomacy, although I've been doing it a long time. You'll have much more depth to your examples that you can give here, okay? And of course, reporting information, we can talk about, of course, it's always been happening, but technology with, let's say, cybersecurity, WikiLeaks, the leaking of the American documents. We could talk about that still, but that's as a negative, but that's still a thing that is being maintained since, I don't know, the time of the kings, but we can't go there. Or we're not going back in history. So anyway, 3 clear arguments for each paragraph illustration based on these core functions, which are obvious and even in the question. And that's what makes this question so simple, so easy to do. Right? You know, I think someone even who probably have only got a little bit of understanding of world affairs and what the role is of diplomacy could have done this. You know, it's a poor question. I'm sorry to be critical, but it's a poor question. But we're all in a way dealt the same deck of cards, so we've got to answer them, of course, with few mistakes. This is the crux of the matter with these mistakes. Okay, so fine. All right. Now, of course, this has come out. So obviously the introduction would be something like diplomats work to protect a country's citizens, repair relationships, and create lasting bonds. I took this off the internet. This standard sentence, but it attacks the question. Then you can compare and contrast the quotes. And then we say diplomacy has adjusted this last line I've taken here. Of course, I'm not going to lift it from the question if I was doing the exam, but really, you know, you could use the exact same information, just change the words. Okay, but to decide if it is simply made the same. This is from the first quotation by Jovan, and that's basically the same thing you're going to say here. You know, maybe you've got another idea. Maybe you say there is a radical change. Maybe you say diplomacy has failed. Okay, but the general consensus is, of course, it's adjusted to the different changes in the world, but diplomacy at its core is still the same. So that would be the obvious answer. All right, those questions we've just done, these would be standard statements that would be good enough, and content, good content. If you are still arguing and talking about those core functions, no, we want content. It's specifically asking for content by saying the time period. Okay, so yeah, so as we said here, I put these 3 things that would be in the introduction. I'm not going to compare and contrast the quote. I'm sorry again about the slide, but this information is just the same as what's been said here. So in a way, what's wrong with his? You're going to agree with this? How can you compare and contrast? Are they very different? Okay, no, it says they remain the same, and they're almost the same. So comparing, yes, that's what you'd probably say, they're very similar. Contrasting them, you would say they were different, but they're not really too different here. Okie dokie, let's continue. So the translation and the summary, these are the areas where these points are going to be won and lost, okay? And of course the summary, oh, okay, I've got the text by Iris Murdoch here, of course, one of the great British-Irish writers. They've always got a touch of Irish in them, okay? They're great writers of our time, okay? Just like teachers, we've all got great teachers. We've all got the Irish in us, okay? So Iris Murdoch, of course, she wrote very, let's say, sexual, very moralist books of her time. There's a very good film with Judi Dench playing Iris Murdoch. I suggest you watch it as well. It's excellent. Okay, fine. Showing her life. So did you again underline these main words you would have problems with? So here I just quickly put the text into English so I could stick it quickly through and double check, okay, through the translator to see what they had, okay. Of course, Javali is boar, okay. Denchis, hello Zanchis, I would never have chosen that, but that's what it came out. Of course, I don't have the Portuguese you have, Brilhantes, I think would be fine. Okay, this Caio Silvo Constancia Fraco, it's difficult. Your Portuguese very, and this is difficult for me. Repente, penumbra. I've never heard that before as well. That's what it came out. Okay, uncanny is estranho. Okay, something is uncanny. It's strange, and naturally tall. Okay, so those main. Have a look at this later. What you see, of course. Cell he uses, she uses. Sorry, his. The capital H, you need to follow the same punctuation, okay? Of course, this is piece of literature. So long sentence with lots of commas. So you need to continue that same punctuation, okay? Same, don't really stop and decide to have a new sentence. We must keep as close to the text as possible. We need to have that faithful text, okay, which is the criteria. Okay, of course, I'll go in a moment. So I think my wife's ringing. She realized she's forgotten that I'm here giving class. So let me send her a message. Okay, fine. Here we go. So it's terrible when you've got a good wife who worries about you. You can't get away and escape. So there we are. I don't see the slide for the summary here. I'll find where it is. But, okay. But, you know, the main areas where the summary is, the summary, of course, is if you've been preparing the summary, it's of course about Machado, writing about Machado by the lady who was translated all of his works into English. But it's as long as you get the enough content and fill it up, fill the paper up with between 30 and 40 lines, you're okay. It's the mistakes that's the problem there, okay? It's just practice. Practice of the summaries, doing those summaries, because as I've always said, they're too big, the number of words between 33% and 50%. You've got, you know, a text of about 1,000 words, 900 words, and you have to reduce it to, let's say, 330 or 450 words, maybe 500 words. So it's the same size as the composition, 5 paragraphs, 4 paragraphs, big paragraphs, not short paragraphs, okay? They're nicely linked together, and you're okay, okay? But you have, of course, got to practice those summaries. If you've been studying with me, you've been doing that, right? So students usually, of mine, usually get well over 10, 11, 12, 13 points. The summary is not the problem, it's always the mistakes. So we've got to see the recursos. Let's go. Let's plead for these recursos. We need to appeal. Now, as I said, the English requires a lot of appealing, especially after last year and the behavior of the examiner. Very disappointed. And that's why we still don't know who are these examiners. I've seen a list of online examiners, but that's not of last year. That's of the previous years. I see some of them even were from CESPI in the previous years, examiners. But the last year's Don't know. Very, very poor. If I had time to analyze all the people who I did HIT courses with, and be able to go to court, it would really end the life of this examiner, because we're going to see anyway. All right, we're going to see an example. By doing an example, all right, by doing an example, you are able to see what goes into doing the HIT courses. Okay, this should move away. This wasn't supposed to be here, of course. But on my Instagram, these slides are there. It's about the HIT courses, okay? It's an administrative appeal. So if you think you've not scored correctly, okay, on the Instagram, I have given these phrases that I took from my previous students who did very, very well, who got, first place in the concurso overall. Okay, and of course, one of the top places in the English as well, because we worked on HIT courses. We had time then because there weren't a lot of mistakes. But the formal way of writing HIT courses, like if you're a lawyer, you need to use a style of language. And these are the typical phrases that you can find on my Instagram. I put them last year because I was so overwhelmed with the amount of non-mistakes that there was on the compositions. Okay, fine. So what we're going to do, we are going to look at first the scoring, so you clearly understand the scoring and how we need to have all that evidence. Okay, and then we're going to look at one example of a student from last year. All right, and you're probably shocked about how it was scored. Right, so let's just remind ourselves of the scoring. Okay, we've got the composition, which is of course 10, 10, and 10. Okay, 10 for the overall impression, the presentation, the style. 11 for the arguments. So we've got those 3 arguments in the composition, and of course the content that we've used, and of course the analysis as well. Mainly analysis is coming, of course, in the introduction and the conclusion as well. But mainly we set the tone with the introduction. And of course, 25 points for your mistakes in the, of course, English and Portuguese. Of course, at 15 points. The Portuguese to English being 20 points. That was, of course, a change last year, the previous years. And then, of course, the summary, resumo, 15 points. Okay, so remember in our strategy, what do we have to do first? Composition and summary. They're cognitively the same. They're very similar. They look very similar. They're very similar language. So we do those first to try and get over 40 for points for the composition, and over 10, let's say 12 or 13 for the summary. And then we've got our 50 points, and then we can relax, because of course the translations are a lottery, right? They are a lottery. I couldn't do these translations. It would take me days to just do the short translation. And in the past, when we used to look at translation, used to do it with a group, with 2 or 3 people looking at translation and giving their opinion, which would be the best option. You don't have that time, of course, in the exam to discuss with anyone. Of course, you can't. But even myself, doing it by myself, it would be difficult. So, of course, they're unfair. It's unfair. They're the points you've got to get to bring you up, either to pass or to put you in those top places. But we need to guarantee the classification. So if you follow the strategy of composition, then summary, and then do the translations, and you've done it and you knew where you were going, you did everything within the time, you didn't rush, 5 hours is plenty, okay? And then you know you've got a good mark. If you fulfill that strategy and come out, relatively relaxed, you won't be happy with your exam. Of course not. Nobody is. But if you've fulfilled everything you've done in your strategy to be able to produce the exam within the time, without stress, to be able to go through and see your problems and correct them, then of course you are naturally going to do well. Fine, so let's have a look. That's the HIT courses. So we are going in the Diary Oficial, of course, looks at, okay, that's just me repeating this, okay, come from Diary Oficial, okay. So let's have a look at the composition example and the research you need to do from last year. Now we're going to look at these tools you find on the internet, Google Ngrams, corpus and concordance research. We're going to find that. Dictionaries, of course, you're going to use Collins, Cambridge, Webster's, and dictionary.com, and any other, all right, because that's not just knowing the correct definition of a word. They've got so many other tools that you can use, okay, especially Collins, as we'll see today, all right. Then you've got your language sites for sentences. We'll look at some of them as well. I'll give you all of these as we go through, and this will be recorded so you can watch this again. All right, so if you're getting a bit tired, this will, I think, should be recorded again. And of course, any good websites which have got good language. Of course, if you go, we see Foreign Affairs website was used in the TPS. Wow, the TPS had 4 questions in the HIT courses. Wow. Shows how badly these exams are being done by EAGIS. Okay, this is a terrible question for the composition. And Shakespeare, how ridiculous. But anyway, enough about that. And good websites with text so you can compare. So if you go onto websites like, let's say, Foreign Affairs, and manage to find those same forms of phrases and use them as examples, then you can use that for your HIT courses. So if you find the text, so when you go into Google and you're searching, you put in your sentence or your text or your collocation, put them in, and you see what Google gets you first, and then you do more and more research to see if a book or a website, a reputable website that is, okay, one that would be have a good level of language, okay, The Economist, but Foreign Affairs, what's the other one they use? I forgot. But those main ones, especially in Foreign Affairs, are the ones you should use. So these are the main tools. We'll have a look at them as we go through. So here was a student who passed last year, all right? But when we look at his marks, we see, of course, out of 25 for the organization presentation, 10, Joya. The arguments and the content, 9, very good. And for the analysis, 3. 25 points available, 22.5, great. We know how to organize. The year before this, students were getting 25 out of 25 for this. We know how to organize. The example of the plan we did here shows how we're organizing. If you've been with me, I've drilled into you how important is this organization to guarantee that the examiner has an easy read. He's got no difficulty. You're not taking any risks, writing any stupid language, just giving him clear, objective ideas that he has no difficulty reading. It's not the Portuguese exam. We're not being Machado here, all right? We're not showing how wonderful language is. We're showing how wonderful our ideas are and how our analysis, and then we can put it clearly down on the piece of paper, all right? So yes, it's very different than Portuguese. Obviously, if you're at this, well, you should know this by now if you're at this stage. Okay, so great, perfect impression, easy to read, great ideas, organization, fantastic. So then we see the mistakes. And then we see the number of lines, 48, so there's no penalties can be given. He's not gone over the line, over the side of the lines, not written more than 50 lines, so it can't be penalized. But the mistakes are 38 mistakes, and we've got 0.67 points. So 38 mistakes, 0.6 is 25.46 penalty points. So we've got, he's going to get 0.46, okay, out of 25. So what does that give us? 22.5 plus minus 0.46 equals 22.5, or fail. Now, people say that the examiner says if it's more than 25 mistakes that you failed anyway. I hadn't seen that. I haven't seen that in the Edgertown. All right. And one person I remember last year was very disappointed that I was pushing them to do the HIT courses because they felt that they were they had enough to pass. But when they did the HIT courses, then the examiner penalized them. Now, I'd never heard that happen before, and they said that happened to them. I'm very surprised it did. Now, what do you got to do? You're going to do the HIT courses thinking they're going to eliminate you, or you're going to do the HIT courses thinking that you've got to get these extra points because either you're failing, or you're in the margin, as that person was, I believe, okay, or you're in a good position and you want to get more points, which is usually the case. But this person would have failed, really, because there's no way with 22%, with another 10 points and the translation, that it would have been have enough points really to get 50. This is less than 25% of the whole test. And with everything else, it's difficult. So we went for the HIT courses. So we saw, this is the first paragraph. Okay, so we looked at him, had 11 mistakes in the first paragraph. We look at, wow, this is ridiculous. Last year, my students would have had 1 or 2 mistakes at the most to the introduction, because it would be simple and clear. And this is not a problem as well. 11 mistakes, the examiner said, and they are not 11 mistakes. So let's have a look how we can research information to be able to do it. Okay, so the first mistake here, let's go back. So there are these mistakes. We're going to go through each one of these mistakes. I'm going to show you how we're going to research it. Now, I'm sorry, this PowerPoint is not very dynamic, so hopefully the information will still be there. So, Roosevelt support. What is the problem with Roosevelt's? Well, Roosevelt's, or Roosevelt, I should say. Don't know, but it's a mistake. Is it spelt wrong? No. Is it got the, of course, the possessive? Yes. What's the problem? Is the problem that maybe it's difficult to read? No, because he got 10 for overall impression and legibility, 100%. So there's no way any of these could be because the examiner doesn't read it clearly. All right. Of course, lots of people got a problem with their handwriting, but if you've got a 10 in that 1A criteria, then you can justify that in your HIT courses. You can always say none of these mistakes can be due to bad handwriting because I've got a 10, even if it's 8.5, or which is usually the other mark they give. You still have to justify it like that. The handwriting's perfectly all right, so this can't be due to the handwriting. And use that in every item you've got to do in your HIT courses. All right. We need arguments. We need evidence, and how, as best as we can, to prove that the examiner is wrong. So we have courses, the appeal, we win the appeal. Okay, I'm not going to say he courses. So that was Roosevelt. Don't know why, but we've easily found this was from a site. We found about Roosevelt support. I just put it online, came out. It's from a reputable site. So with we would explain that this is perfectly acceptable, give a clear example, and the link where the examiner or the appeals commission can see. And then it's got that point back. All right, you can't really say nothing. And they can't say anything about this. Okay, distinct category was the next one. Let's have a look one. Distinct category. Right, it's category. So what's the problem here? Don't know. Distinct category in Collins Co-Build, because in Collins Co-Build, let me go here, they have these collocations, okay? And they have example sentences to prove that they exist. So this is one very good website for you to use. Of course, they relate to definitions and of course collocations. So Co-Build, Collins Co-Build, many years ago, revolutionized the English dictionary, and still today it's got fantastic resources. Every other dictionary has caught it up, but the way it looks at language did give us a lot more, better resource. So this is a very important site for you to use. So go and use it, put the information here and see what you get. All right, and then you're going to get evidence that you need, and then you of course get the link and use that as the second item in this case that we've now overturned. So we've got those two. We've done Roosevelt, we've done category. Why is the examiner doing this? We don't know. So that's why I think it's criminal. Maybe the examiner's child or 3-year-old child got to draw on this. Okay, then we have settled with. Now, try to find if with will go. And I couldn't find it. Okay, so I'll have a look at this site, which is one I use a lot with my students in correcting and showing them about this corpus research. And this is a very simple site for you to use. Settled with. All right, so when we look here, no, I couldn't. These are settled with prepositions. Okay, and how do I find that? I go to the simple site. It's very simple. That's where I use it. It's simple like me. All right, just the word. That's a website. So of course I put the word in settle. And then I press the button. It's going to give me all those combinations. And it gives me lots of combinations, okay? And I'm sorry this would come out after. So, hang on, let me see, because I can't see this either now, my glasses. Okay, so then I would find I'm settled with the preposition to see if that was there. And of course, I haven't got it here. So I'll be disappointed that maybe I can't fight for this. All right, so this one we may have to leave. Then we go to the next one. In the following, what the hell is wrong with this? The examiner kept this writing in, and other people also told me online that in was a word that they'd chosen to penalize candidates. Why? So usually in the following goes with in the following question, the following examples, in the following pages. That's normally, okay, normally. And so but we've got in the following 75 years. That sounds perfectly all right to me, but I have to prove it. So I need to find evidence to show the examiner how his pen slipped here. All right. So, of course, I go back to the same site that I was just on, just the word following. I put in following, and I got following year. And then I've got, and then what did I do? Following year. Great, they go together. Then I click here, and then we've got a concordance sample, what we call them, okay? And we see in the following year. In the following 70 years, doesn't really matter. The structure is still there. We can still justify that the examiner has made a mistake with evidence to prove it, okay? So just the word is a very useful tool to research with, okay, to prove it. So not only do you just have the list, then when you click on this, you see all of the texts that have in the following year, which we're looking for. We see the behavior here, and we can then prove with, these are statistical evidence basically, all right? So the examiner can't really argue about this, you know. That's why if he did, as I say, it would be criminal, because it's taken away your possibility of getting a job just because they feel like it. So there we are. Then we've justified that. Okay. Also, there is something called n-grams. Now you go Google n-grams. So you go into Google n-grams, and you get a little chart like this. Okay, and then you put in the following years, and then it shows in the following years. In the following years is the start. And in the following years, like this version, don't use, but these are quite frequently used, okay? So again, more evidence. So also use n-grams. The Google research is fantastic. Just Google itself search. It's fantastic. Don't think because it's Google things are wrong. Remember, Google has been sucking in English for how many years? Using artificial intelligence, using research, using codes. Wow, it's fantastic. The translations, people used to say, oh, Google Translation's terrible. No, it's very good. All right, it's very good indeed. All right, of course, we need other sites which we'll look at with translations, but you know, it's this help you need to research. And Google itself and Google Translation and lots of the tools like Google n-grams here are tools that we need to prove our evidence, okay? To give our evidence, sorry, and prove the examiner is wrong. So don't turn your nose up.
Okay. Teacher, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Mateus is asking us if we can directly quote Google n-gram. Would that be a problem, or
of course, no, there'd be no problem at all. Okay, because was that Gabrielle? Was saying? Okay, Gabrielle, who said the question? Sorry, because
Mateus.
Sorry, Mateus. So what, Mateus? Remember, we are lawyers in this case. Okay, there we are. We're lawyers in this case. We need evidence to prove things. So if you've got no evidence, you can't prove it. But if the one evidence you've got is an n-gram, okay, then we use that. All right, because we've got to show that we're researching, we know what we're doing, and we're confident that we're right. If not, you'd give up and you'd lose this point. Remember, this candidate had just in the introduction 11 mistakes. Okay, so we use, if we have to use 2 or 3 different n-grams and use just the word which uses the British National Corpus, one of the best corpuses in the world. There are other ones, but uses it. We use, and Collins Colville, 3 pieces of information to prove our 1 point. Fine. All right. Don't just have to use 1, say n-grams, but if only 1 is available, then use that. All right. We need as much information to prove that the examiner is wrong. All right. So that's why you're being a lawyer here. You're fighting, you know, your life. So evidence is what we need. I hope that gave Mateus answered your question. Sorry, I didn't say it. Okay. So let's have a look. This thing is splitting words, which I told everybody, never split words. Of course, there are cases where you can argue. There are some rules. That was one of my books. There are some rules, but they're sort of rule of thumb rules, okay? You'd have to find them. I do have a book about them. But if you go on to YouTube here, okay, I did a video many years ago because I was so surprised that so many people are concerned about splitting words, hyphenating words at the end of the sentence, because you're always worried about the space, okay, with the number of lines you've got. Usually it's not normally a problem in English. So I suggest you didn't, because look, okay, this one's not penalized, but this one was, yeah, this was penalized. No, this one wasn't. We don't know why, but there are some rules to it, but it's easier not to split words, then you don't get penalized. So leave a little bit of a space, just like here, or yeah, even if not as big as this one, but that's the tactic, the strategy you've got to do to avoid the risk. Now, on YouTube, I made a video about splitting words. It's just a funny cartoon, but there is the sort of recommended rules for splitting words. As I say, I don't like you to split the words, but there are recommended rules. And then from that, you can research this a little bit more, okay? But there are certain things that are acceptable in splitting words. We usually say, if you can guess what the next word is going to be, you have a good guess, then, you know, you've got the first word and then its first part and the second part, and you can guess it. Like designed, we wouldn't really be able to guess after D what would come. But the examiner hasn't penalized it for some reason. But he has here. So if it's a problem for you, of course, we managed to prove it here and reduce this by saying it was perfectly okay. We should be acceptable, and the examiners seem to accept it because there are very few rules. You have to be confident and say, this is incorrect, this should be right. And we use the explanation that's in this video, okay, to be able to retrieve those penalty points. Again, constant present. What the hell is wrong with, okay, became is probably because of the splitting of words, okay? But constant presence, what the hell is wrong with that? Don't know. Remember, spelling's perfectly okay, yeah. It's legible because you've got evidence that the examiner said, given us 10 points. So then he must have, yeah, his child must have been liked the word constant and decided to ring it. No real reason, okay? And having resigned to the status of non-employment, not a great sentence, but we need evidence. So Mateus, we need to find evidence to to get this. So how do we do this? Okay, of course we go to the dictionary. This one was from Webster's, okay. Resign, what is it? Meaning a feeling of showing acceptance for something unwanted. And that's it, resign to the status of a non-permanent member. That's the meaning we want, okay? Of course, and so we're showing that this meaning is correct. So we need that evidence, okay? And it's clear, a resigning sigh. They had resigned manners of long-term detainees. They had the resigned manners of, so the acceptable acceptance of something unwanted. And that's what that means. And you think, no, it doesn't. But that's the argument we're using. I think it does. Maybe thinks, well, it's too Portuguese, but that actually is quite correct. Okay, maybe it could have been having been resigned too, okay, which I also suggested. But here, found that clear meaning. So we're able to get that point back. Could have been having meaning. Okay, as I said, been here. What would have been better in the next 75 years? probably been better, but we still proved that we had evidence enough to say the examiner was wrong. Unless they're being right, it's having evidence to prove the examiner is wrong. Do you understand what I mean? Because this is what the appeals are. Okay, we are derrubando whatever argument that they've got, right, to prove that our choice is right. And that's difficult. So we need these tools to help us. Okay, then we have this one. Over the last 30 years. Now I find this on this website here. It has all of the phrases over recent years, over the last years. Gave me the evidence I need again. So we use this, put this into one of our items again, and with this link to prove our point. Okay, over the last 30 years, over the past few years, over the last 10 years, 30 and 10 doesn't really matter. So again, another one. So how many have we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, probably 9. We've got 8 of them already. He had 30 mistakes. We've already got down to 30. Had 38. Now we've got down to 30. So now we're saving 8 points, 8.60. So we're taking 3-4 points now. I think a lot more maybe. All right. So now he's getting over 25. From 22 over 25. So now we've got a better chance to be able to pass. Okay, so here's one from another site here. All right, type in that after and use this site. It's very good for these sentences. I forgot what it is. I'm sorry when I did this. I did this a few weeks ago when we do HIT courses in one of my classes. Right, but that was the evidence. What else do we have? Then we had this phrase. Where is it? As a candidate. As a candidate. Placed something as a candidate. We don't know why the examiner chose placed as a candidate. Probably if it was CESPI, they would never have looked at it, never bothered. So we have to prove it, okay? So in a way, as a candidate, difficult for me to find place. And that's the problem. Couldn't really find any argument for place. You know, here I found arguments for it. It's difficult, but I haven't got arguments for placed. But I have got as a natural candidate, as a candidate, as a candidate. I've got examples, okay? What I found on a website. Also, I've got from my just as candidate from my Just the Word website. It's a great website, okay? It gives me everything I need, okay? You can always go to also sentencechecker.org and put the sentence in, and it tells you, it goes to Grammarly as well, and it tells you if the sentence is correct or not. So you can be sure that it is, and then find similar sentences. I found it here, which was from this, I think from the same site I used here. Okay, this one. Right, so you put these language sites, you put in the sentence or the phrase, and it gives you sentences. So even if you put as a candidate, you go to Google. All right, here's another way. Go to Google and you write the phrase as a candidate, right? And then you write in a sentence. And then it looks, you may have to put some quotation marks, okay, but it's always a good, you put that phrase in a sentence, and sometimes it gives you the exact site which have got all of these sentences, or it gives you websites that has, you know, a good website which has a text, a reputable website or a book that uses that we can say, well, that author uses it, that website accepted it. So that's again our evidence. All right, so we use that link and prove it. So that's what we're doing. We're proving this, okay? Ngram, or as a candidate, yes, it's quite used, what in the still used quite frequently. Ngram also can check it. So These are the tools we're using. All right. Also Lingui. All right. So I tried place within a country. I did try, actually. I forgot to attack this. Place within a country. So I used Lingui to try, because Lingui is a translation. It's got Portuguese and it's got English, okay? And so it's lots and lots of text. Okay, it's got other languages as well. But if I'm checking something in Portuguese, I use this to compare with English, to see what other translators have done. They take translated documents and they compare them. All right, and they put it all together. So Lingui is very good. Again, put the sentence in, see what it gives you. If you think it's a good argument, that's what you're going to use. So Lingui is another site. People in the past said, oh, but Lingui is not good. But Lingui over many years has definitely improved, and it's used. Now, if you say, but Lingui is not good, but if it's the only evidence you've got, that's what you're going to use. All right? Even the examiners might say, oh, Lingui is not very good, but that's the evidence. You've got something tangible to show him, because we need to attack all of these. We can't leave one out, right? And that's how long it takes to do this, all right? You know, I've only done one paragraph, and it would take me to discuss it. I would probably be quicker if I did it, but it takes a long time to go through these, and they're 38 to do. Fine, let's go. So there we are. Another site here, Ludwig Guru, is very, very good for sentences as well. Okay, here was approach towards the US. Towards, what is wrong with towards? Well, toward is more common in American English, and towards are more common in British English. There's no etymological reason why this is the case. Now, this came out, I said, what's the difference? I went to Google, said, what's the difference toward and towards? And this came up from a grammar site. And then also, this was approach. And then, of course, I used that as my link and my, to prove that there's no reason why he should be being penalized. This one, I'm sure, this one was, cannot find this one because, of course, it's PowerPoint. Doesn't move in Google. But another site, Ludwig Guru, also, which gives you sentences very similar in a way to Collins, with different types of tools for you to use. You're being a language researcher, something, of course, I did my master's doing, but not with these tools, but with other tools, of course. All right, so but I and other teachers, maybe other teachers are watching this for the same tools as well. See, how do I do it compared to them? We're not going to have a lot of time to do 38 mistakes if the examiner does it for one person and then do it for another, let's say 10 or 20%. It's too much. So you have to help yourself. And that's what I'm doing this for, okay? To give me an easier time, all right? But give you the tools to be able to do it yourself, because you need to do courses. They're so important. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to move on. Again, in, for some reason, the examiner didn't like in. There's no reason in Flemigo-Dawes' administrative. Now you can find examples like this so easily. Okay, sort, there's no problem. Ecuador, what's the problem here? Is it spelling? No, there's no reason at all. So we can't give up. We said this is perfectly spelled, perfectly right. It's clear. We've got 10 for legibility, so there should be no reason for this. And the examiner takes it off. It must be some poor English or English teacher, I don't know, who is afraid, it's getting paid, but really doesn't know English too much. All right, and they are, I don't know really what they're doing. Right, wow, come to an end. Well, again, all of this is not all of these we have to attack. Launch its candidate, that was it. Did I get that? Assuming approach. No, I'm sorry. I didn't include these. Okay. So there's no reason for these towards. Okay. Launch a candidate. Okay. That's where I proved. This one, stay distant from. Yeah, not we should be really remain distant from. I can probably agree with the examiner, but would I try and prove that this was wrong? Yes, I would, because I need to try and revert everything. Okay. These 4 countries, what's the problem there? These 4 countries. No reason. During Lula's administration, is it too informal? We don't know. So we have to hit all of them. And these, if this happens this year, yeah, last year, a couple of teachers got in touch with me wanted to discuss this. I hope if I'll push them to this video as well, because they were talking about going to Ministerio Público to complain about that. I don't do that sort of thing. I teach Ministerio Público, so I can talk to them about it, but I'm not going to do it over an exam. So I'm not going to ask them anything. No way. I teach them. I don't want to get involved with these courses as well. But I think we just lose that. But anyway, that's me just thinking out loud. That's it, really. Now, after all, is it informal? We have to fight against this. Have no qualms. It's perfectly, but that sort of, I wouldn't like to use that, but have no, perfectly acceptable. Okay, so these ones we look online, we can find answers like this, okay, and we use them in a way to try and get the examiner to revert his mark. I think that is it, is it? I'm going to go on forever with these. I'm not going to get flourish here. It was really poor. Good. Fine. Well, it's getting late, and my wife's already complained that I didn't tell her I should be here. So I'm going to be in the doghouse when we go home. So I hope, I'm sorry, I couldn't see your comments. I don't know how this really works. Gabriel, no sé cómo funciona más. Alguém está reclamando, por favor, manda reclamação no meu Instagram.
Pode deixar, professor. Acho que ninguém está reclamando, não. Foi excelente contar com os seus comentários. Pessoal, por favor, né, quem está assistindo a gente e esteve na segunda fase, contem com o professor Shao para elaboração de recursos. As dicas que ele deu aqui para a gente foram essenciais, então realmente vamos contar com todo esse apoio. Enfim, o que precisarem, vocês podem contar sempre com o Clipping, com a nossa equipe de professores super especializados, que a gente é sempre por aqui. Professor, no mais, eu gostaria de te agradecer imensamente pela live de hoje, pelos comentários, e estamos sempre à disposição. Foi um prazer contar contigo hoje por aqui.
Ok, tudo bem. Thank you very much. All the best to everyone. Beijos e abraços, and keep fingers crossed everything goes well.
Isso aí. Boa noite, pessoal. Obrigado por quem acompanhou a gente até aqui. Vamos ficando por aqui agora. Até mais. Tchau, tchau.